Welcome to H-Frame, the only comprehensive, totally unofficial guide to vintage Black & Decker Workmates. The website is hframe with a hyphen .weebly.com, where you will find my in-depth documentation, over 60 web pages, over 100 PDF documents, over 500 photographs, and still growing. Subject of this video is the Workmate 79-001 types 6, 7, and 8, which were made from November 1978 to November 1981 in Black & Decker's factory in Brockville, Ontario, Canada, for the United States and Canadian markets. Production of the Black & Decker Workmate for North America began in 1974 with the model 79001, which then continued through 1982 in 10 versions designated by Black & Decker as types E through 9. My website has extensive background info about the early Workmates, and my videos for the Type E, Type 1, and Type 2 in particular also have info about earlier features that carry through to the later ones, such as these. The most common 79001 is the Type 2, accounting for roughly 45% of 79001s. The Type 4 is second most common at very roughly 20% of all 79001s. The Type 6, 7, and 8 follow as the next most common, vying for third place at very roughly 8 to 11% each. As you may know, Black & Decker discontinued the original cast aluminum H-frames on the Workmate in December 1977 during production of the 79001 Type 4. With Type 6, they made another significant change, eliminating the double-layer jaws. To me, this means that the Type 6 brought an end to what might be called the classic configurations of the Workmate 79001, with the iconic aluminum H-frame and the double-layered jaws gone for good. On one positive note, the Type 6 did make an improvement to the folding leg mechanism. Let's start with a quick look at what differentiates the Type 6 through Type 8 from each other and from 79001s. In other words, if you have a 79001 with no type marking, what's the easiest way to positively identify it as a Type 6, 7, or 8? If it has steel H-frames rather than aluminum ones, single-layer jaws, that is without the second layer where the two jaws meet each other, and it has plastic top release levers rather than steel ones, it is a Type 6. If it has steel H-frames, the single layer jaws, steel top release levers rather than the plastic ones, and a single screw-in leveler foot plus 3 slip-on rubber boot feet at the ends of the legs, it is a Type 7. Finally, if it has slip-on rubber boot feet on all 4 legs, and it has steel U-bracket jaw mounts, it is a Type 8. I'll show you close-ups of those parts in a few minutes. The 79001 Type 6 was produced from November 1978 to September 1979. When production started, it was extremely similar to the Type 4, with 1 change to the jaws and 3 changes to the feet and legs. First of all, a couple of things that it carried over from the Type 4 was the steel H-frames, which became a new feature partway through production of the Type 4, and the black plastic top release lever that you see here, replacing a steel one. The double layer jaws that had been a constant up through the Type 4 were replaced by the single layer you see here. The relatively rare Irish-made Type 3 and Type 5 have single layer jaws, but the Type 6 was the first Canadian-made type with this feature. To partially compensate for the reduced clamping surface, the 15/16" plywood, or MDF, used for the jaws is thicker than what was used for the previous double layer jaws. The ability to level the Workmate continued to decline, now with the elimination of screw-in feet for the sawhorse height setting. This meant that the large clearance holes near the upper ends of the legs on earlier Workmates were no longer necessary because the screw-in feet were not there. In that location on the surface of the legs are now these non-adjustable rubber bumper feet. These were used only on the Type 6 and Type 7. These had to be installed by the owner, and many owners seem to have put the feet away and misplaced them, so those bumper feet are often missing. The legs now have a large unexplained hole at the bottom end near the foot. This feature stayed with the Workmate 79001 through the Type 9. The inner spring steel clip for the folding legs, that's the one that holds them closed, changed shape again for the second time, now to resemble the one on the Type 3. This Type 6 was produced later, after that leg mechanism had changed again during production of the Type 6, so I can't show you that reshaped clip. You can see a photo of it at my website. With the Workmate upside down, I can give you another view of that bumper foot I was just showing you from a little better angle. During production of the Type 6, there was only 1 change made. In April 1979, the mechanism for latching the folding legs was simplified. If you're familiar with the earlier leg arrangement, you notice there's something missing here. The steel spring clips that were used starting with the Type 1 were eliminated. They were replaced with a friction hinge, similar to the hinge in a laptop computer, which can keep the leg in any position from fully folded to fully open without the need for any catch or clip. For the most part, I find the friction hinge to be an improvement, certainly in reliability over the earlier spring clips, although sometimes they can get a little difficult to move. They get a little too much friction in them. One other thing I'll point out is that you can see here on the corner of the frame a remnant of the threaded hole for the adjustable foot at the corner of the frame. Can't quite see it into it in this light, but it's now just sort of a dimple in the steel, but it's still there. The hole doesn't go through and there's no threading. On the Type 8, the threaded hole will return, as I'll show you shortly. While it's upside down here, you can see the date code 91543, meaning it was made in 1979, the 15th week, 4th day of the week, 3rd work shift, which works out to April 12th, 1979. It also has the stamp that says Type 6. I'll jump ahead just a little to say that about 2 months into production of the Type 7, Black & Decker stopped using an ink stamp to mark the type number, replacing the stamp with a small adhesive sticker on the upper frame that I'll show you shortly. Finally, the last change on the Type 6, about a month before production of the Type 6 ended, a second United States patent number was added to the caution label on the jaws. This Type 6 was made before that change occurred, so I'll show you that label in a moment on the Type 8. So let's move on to the Type 7 now. 79001 Type 7 was produced from September 1979 to June 1980 and is nearly identical to the Type 6. Changes between them are so minor that it's surprising that Black & Decker gave it a new type number. I don't have a Type 7 right now, so I'll use this Type 8 as a stand-in for this segment. First, this is the jaw label with the second U.S. patent number added that I mentioned a moment ago. It was first used on the late production Type 6 and continued through the Type 7 and Type 8. If you can see, the section in the lower half of the label starts out with the word patents. Then the second line has the name United States, and that's followed by 2 patent numbers. On the earlier similar label, there was only 1 patent number. There were only 2 changes at the introduction of the Type 7. First one I've got here, the plastic top release levers, the black plastic I showed you earlier, from the Type 6 changed back to the original ones with the coil springs that were used on the Type 1, Type 2, and Type 4. This was the only instance where the 79001 reverted to a component used earlier. On the Type 7, the levers are attached somewhat differently at their upper pivot point than they were on the early types. Here they used the hex head screw that was used with the plastic levers that preceded them. Second change was that the plastic vise handles and arms changed from a smooth finish to the lightly textured finish you can see here. These do seem to have a better grip, but I'm not sure that slippery handles were really much of a problem on the earlier Workmates. There were only 2 more changes during the 9-month production run of the Type 7. In November 1979, less than 2 months into production of the Type 7, the markings changed, including this revised label on the crossbar of the H-frame. The Workmate is no longer the deluxe dual height Workmate, but now the portable work center and vise dual 29-inch model. This change in name came about because by 1980, Black & Decker had added a slightly smaller dual height model. That was the second dual height one that they referred to as the dual 27-inch model to distinguish the two from each other. The other change in marking is that the type number was no longer stamped in ink on the bottom of the jaws. Instead, they use a small rectangular white on black sticker with the model and type number that's applied to the interface of one of the upper frame pieces that support the jaws. This is what that sticker looks like on a Type 8. In April 1980, this was the second and last change during the production of the Type 7. A new material was introduced for the jaws. It is an oak veneer over what appears to be a cheaper but slightly thicker plywood, with fewer and thicker plies, down to 9 plies from the previous 17. For the final 2 years of the 79001 up through the Type 9, almost all of them had jaws of either this oak plywood or veneered MDF. This brings us to the Type 8, which was produced from June 1980 to November 1981. There were only 2 changes on the Type 8, and they both involved the feet. The single remaining screw-in foot, located on the right rear leg on the Type 7, was replaced with a 4th slip-on rubber foot, eliminating any way to level the Workmate for either height. The rubber bumper feet on the upper part of the legs used for the sawhorse height setting on the Type 6 and 7 were discontinued. The holes for the bumper feet are still there, as you can see. The sawhorse height now uses what Black & Decker called a corner foot. This is a fixed right angle piece of black plastic mounted on each of the lower corners of the frame. The holes that were originally used for the adjustable screw-in feet have returned in the same location and are now used to attach the corner feet. There were no changes to the Type 8 during its 1.5-year production run. Before I finish here, the Brockville production code on this Type 8 is worth looking at. You can see it's stamped 22240, which, if you think about it, is a little strange. The initial digit of 2 would seem to mean that it was produced in 1982, which was after production of the Type 8 had ended. The final digit of 0 can't be correct for the work shift, which would have to be a 1 through a 3. The explanation is that there was a period from mid-1980 to late 1981 where perhaps 1 out of 6 or so 79001s were stamped with a reversed code. If you read this code backwards, right to left, you get 0 for the year, 24 for the week, 2 for the day, and 2 for the work shift, meaning it was made on June 10th, 1980. So it should have been stamped 02422 to be consistent with the codes on other Workmates. I have no idea why there were these variations in the formation of the code for some Workmates during that period. As an aside, how's this for a coincidence? I have owned 2 different Type 8s, purchased about a year apart, and both of them have this same code that you see here. They were made on the same day, the same work shift. And these are also notable for another reason. Out of the 60 or so Type 8s that I have dates for, my 2 matching ones are also the earliest ones manufactured from June 10th, 1980. Couple of fun facts for you. So that's it for my examination of the 79001 Type 6, Type 7, and Type 8. You can find much more about these and all of the early Workmates at my website, including owner's manuals, part diagrams, catalog and newspaper appearances, as well as discoveries I've made that are not documented anywhere else. Thank you for watching.